20 years ago, mayors and county judges began to talk about you need the right to ultimately allow your citizens to decide whether they think so highly of a project that they're willing to vote an expanded local sales tax on themselves for the period of time needed to pay off the bonds for the project. It's been before the legislature a couple times, hasn't gotten anywhere. Our group will be recommending to the governor and the leadership of the legislature that cities and counties should have the right to decide about a project, to put it on the ballot, and let citizens decide whether they want a local dedicated revenue stream from a quarter of a penny, half a penny sales tax that would be on the community for the 20-year time period to pay off the bonds, and then it sunsets. 39 states have that available in America today, and we're one that does not. It takes a constitutional amendment. So it's got to pass the legislature to become a constitutional amendment. Then it's got to go to your respective fiscal courts to have an agreement as to whatever the project is, or whether you even want to do it. And then you ultimately put it on the ballot. People say yes, or people say no. We were in the city the other day in Jacksonville, Florida. They decided that city and county that merged many years ago decided that they wanted to asphalt every street in the county. They wanted to put a new sidewalk in front of every building in the county. They decided they wanted to build a football stadium, a downtown library, and a AAA baseball park. And for that, they needed a half-a-cent sales tax for 25 years. People voted yes. Go down and check it out. Every street has been asphalted. Every building has a sidewalk. You've seen the football stadium. You see it on TV. AAA ballpark in the library. Is it good for everybody? No, it isn't good for everybody. Nobody's going to require any county to make that decision. But the point is, local folks ought to have a right to make local decisions that your local citizenry want to support. So we're going to be recommending that in KACo. We're also talking about broadening the sales tax. Our consultant said that the one thing that's growing in America is services. As you know, our sales tax today is based on products. And again, about 36 states have expanded sales tax to include services. Broaden the base was what our consultant continues to say. So you'll see a recommendation for some luxury items to be recommended to have sales tax. You'll also see a discussion of, for those of you who are business focused, and I suspect that's most of you, you know that right now we have a 3-factor test in terms of our taxes on corporations in Kentucky. And we're going to recommend a change to make it a single-factor apportionment test, which will, although on the one hand cost the state the first year about $60 to $65 million, on the other hand, we will be joining states that have this new apportionment in place that is good for existing businesses in Kentucky, especially manufacturing businesses in Kentucky, that will lower their taxes significantly in hopes that they will invest and create jobs for the future of the Commonwealth. So you'll see that as a proposal that we'll be making shortly. You know, we had an interesting opportunity. We were down in Warren County where a gentleman came forward and said, you know, I have a pension and I am a baby boomer. And I see a few gray hairs out there that probably joined with him and with me as a baby boomer. And he said, my wife has a pension and she's retired. And we now make, with our Social Security, $100,000 a year. And he said, we don't pay a nickel in Kentucky income tax. Not a nickel. And he said, if you look at Indiana, you look at Ohio, and you look at Illinois, they have a $10,000 or $12,000 threshold exemption, after which there's an income tax. We have a $41,000 exemption. After that, there's an income tax. And the guy looked at the panel and he said, you know, we're not paying anything. Look over your shoulder, the boomers are coming. 10,000 retiring every day. If all those people are going to go on pensions, And if nobody's going to continue to participate in helping the public sector fund the services that are necessary, this state's going to be in difficulty. And so he recommended, he said, what that is called is representation without taxation. I thought that was pretty good. I'll say it one more time. Representation without taxation. And he said, you ought to do something about that. Now he said, I don't want to pay a lot of taxes, but he said, we ought to pay something. Came up to Louisville, had two people said the same thing. Went to Lexington, had a guy from Berea and a person from Richmond come up and say the same thing. The boomers are coming. The boomers are coming. You've got to be ready for folks on 401ks, pensions, etc. So we're looking at that. And you could very well see a recommendation, not finalized yet, to decrease that $40,000 to somewhere in the neighborhood of the surrounding states. We recommended a cigarette tax. You know, we were out in Paducah. They had just up in Illinois raised their cigarette tax from 98 cents a pack to $1.98 a pack. So we had a discussion, as you can imagine, a very interesting discussion, where the first person at the commission said, I think we ought to raise our 60-cent sales tax on cigarette tax, excuse me, our 60 cents cigarette tax to $1.60. Well, if you look around our states, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, they're all around the 90, 95 cent level. We're at 60 cents. So we discussed the health issue. We want less kids to smoke. And one of the best ways to do that is to make a pack of cigarettes more expensive. On the other hand, we don't want everybody going across the river, because don't forget, 53% of Kentucky lives on a border. 53% of the population of Kentucky lives on a border. So we want this tax code to be more competitive. We want to be sure we're winning, not losing, to states like Illinois and Tennessee and Ohio and West Virginia and Indiana and Missouri and Illinois. So we decided to recommend, and it's almost finalized, this one is, to move from 60 cents to $1, which will generate about $120 million and also decrease the number of people that will start smoking, which will ultimately save us in the long run for Medicaid funds, etc. And I can go on and on. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I wanted you to understand, on the one hand, we've been cutting. On the other hand, we're looking at the revenue side to be able to have a comprehensive package. But first and foremost, this governor, and I can speak for myself on this one, believes strongly in as much local determination as possible. When in doubt, it ought to be decided at the local level. There's nobody that understands it better than a county official or a city official. And if you don't understand it, you'll find out about it at the next election. We've all been there. So, you know, this meeting of KACo, an opportunity to learn and to hear what's going on in other areas, to learn from those successes, to learn from some of the mistakes, and then to ultimately work with us in a partnership role to be able to ensure as positive a quality of life for your citizens as possible is really what we're all about. Because if I've learned anything, I've gone from a county of Jefferson of 745,000 people to a county of Johnson County with about 23,000 people. And yet the issues are all the same. Everybody wants a good education for their kids or their grandkids. Everybody wants good affordable housing, good opportunities for jobs, clean air, clean water, good infrastructure, be able to get to and from on roads, and ultimately to be assured that the quality of life in those communities is where it should be, as positive an experience as possible. We're all in it together. We've got a lot more in common, folks, than we have that separates us. A lot of times we find east and west and north and south, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, fighting each other, spending all our energies in that regard, rather than realizing that we are all Kentuckians. We have far more in common than we have that separates us. We need to play to those strengths that we have in common and ensure that the future of Kentucky is as bright as possible. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to visit with you.
How about that UK tie from the former Mayor Galt?